Hello, everybody, and welcome to yet another INCON. I'm delighted to have my wingman, wing person back with me, Sarah James, today, because if anybody watched yesterday's interview we did with Professor Browdy, I forgot to do what I've only ever done once before without Sarah's guidance, of actually starting the recording and everything else and just making it on Facebook, only me. And it was only about 5 minutes in when I realized that nobody was responding that I realized I'd made the error again. So we had to go back and recreate it all again. So anyway, welcome back, Sarah. And I hope that everything's been okay and your events last night went well.
Yep, excellent. I was away yesterday because I did probably about 3.5 hours of very intense Egyptology talks. One was about astrology in ancient Egypt and one was about pre-dynastic women.
Sounds absolutely fascinating. And apparently one of the people you were interviewing that was involved in it was from the Wirral, I understand?
Wallasey, Joanne Backhouse.
I was born in Wallasey.
Right, okay, today's guest, I'm really looking forward to this. Today's guest is Alan Bates. I've known Alan for around about 10 years, but I think probably we've known each other far longer in that we both come from the same neck of the woods, as it were, a particular part of the Wirral called the Port Sunlight area. And over the years, I am pretty damn sure that Alan and I probably frequented exactly the same nightclubs, exactly the same pubs and everything. I'm somewhat older than Alan, but I did actually hang around in the nightclub world for probably far longer than I should have done. We'll probably get into a little bit about that background as well. But Alan, in many ways, is somewhat of a man of a mystery to me. He has this fascinating lifestyle. And whenever we've met, he just enthralls me with his stories and his tales of what he's been involved in the past. So I'm really looking forward to having a long, leisurely chat with him about exactly where how he ended up being international celebrity Alan Bates and all the famous people he knows and the people he's worked with. Now, I don't know if you know, but on Facebook, if you noticed, but I posted something a couple of days ago with Alan sitting there looking very, very smug with the band Mel and Kim back in the 1980s. And I'm certainly very intrigued to know exactly how he ended up cooched up with those two very attractive ladies. Of course, some of you probably are too young, I was going to say, to remember Mel and Kim, but they were exceptional, and it was very, very sad when was it Mel Appleby that died? I can't remember which one it was. Alan?
Yeah, I'm not sure. It was one of the sisters that passed away at a very early age, and yeah, but they were lovely. They were sisters, and they were lovely. They were lovely people, really were.
Okay, so without further ado, Alan, tell me a little bit about yourself. You know, what was your background, and how did you get into what you do now?
Well, okay. First of all, good afternoon, good evening, good morning, wherever you're watching from in the world. And also, Sarah, nice to meet you too. So Tony and I, yes, we've been friends for quite a few years now, and there's some synchronicity in how that came around as well. But going back to the very early days, academically, I wasn't very good at school, not because I'm thick or stupid. It was just that I was bored and I just wanted to play around and play games and stuff. So that never really happened at school. It did afterwards when I got into engineering, and I went to engineering college and became a toolmaker, City and Guilds. But it wasn't a profession I was truly happy with, even though I did enjoy engineering. And at the time, I was working, just as I was coming out of my apprenticeship, I was very friendly with a gentleman that run a company called Liverpool Electronics. Sadly, he's passed away now. John Maguire, his name was. And he said, if you're getting bored, Alan, why don't you go, what would you like to go to America and work on the cruise ships? A friend of mine is recruiting engineers to fix the slot machines on Carnival Cruise Lines. And I said, yeah, okay. He said, well, I need an answer tomorrow. So I came in the next day, thought nothing of it, because he was a bit of a practical joker, and I thought he was winding me up. And the next day he said, have you thought about it? And I said, thought about what? And he said, going to America to work out of Miami. And I said, you being serious? And he said, yes. So I went home that night, spoke with my family, friends, and they went, oh, it's a no-brainer. You've got to jump on this. So that was one of the big breaks that I had in life. So within 3 weeks, I was jetting off over to Miami. 820 Biscayne Boulevard, Miami, Florida, 33132. It's like the first registration number plate that you remember of your car, isn't it? So I can never forget that because it changed my life. I went from a young lad from the Wirral who hadn't really traveled at this time over to being in America, based from Biscayne Boulevard and sailing over to Puerto Rico, St. Martin, St. Thomas, San Juan, all these beautiful places, and getting paid to have the most adventurous party lifestyle. I'm going to leave it on that. You can imagine a cheeky young Merseyside boy and lots of young American girls saying, "Hey, he's from England." And they would say, "Well, you know, where are you from?" And I'd say, "Oh, I'm from near Liverpool. You know the Beatles?" And I used to say, "Oh, yeah, well, Paul McCartney and I are best friends. And he comes round to have Sunday lunch with us quite often." And it was just what a great chat-up line. So anyway, there you go. That's history now. But that was a very long time ago. So I think that was instrumental to really changing things for the future. Because, you know, I got to meet a lot of very, very interesting people and went to a lot of places and everything else. And then when I eventually, this was in about 1977, when I came back to the UK in round about 1980, my last trip was sailing across into Amsterdam at the time that Queen Beatrix got crowned Queen of Holland. And there was massive riots on the streets for the students. And I didn't even know what it was about. I came off the ship and I had, I think it was 2 days in Amsterdam before I flew back to the UK. And all these riots were going on. And I remember being, stuck into a shop doorway with a helicopter hovering overhead, riot police and tear gas. Have you ever smelled tear gas?
No.
Absolutely awful. I didn't even know what was going on. And I thought, if the police lift me now, I don't even know what this is about. But anyway, so that was the end of the career of sailing. But before I finish off on it, there was I had an experience with a Scottish illusionist who used hypnosis occasionally, and I won't go into the story now. It's a little bit on a personal level, but I was absolutely delighted with what I saw him do. So when I came back to the UK, bearing in mind that this was before the days of the internet, I used to hit the libraries and get books on hypnosis, psychology, and it was really hard reading. I didn't understand most of the words, but I fuddled my way through. And then I went to watch a few stage hypnotists who were rather big at the time, and I was purely hooked into it then, into the power of the mind and what we are capable of doing, the toolbox we're sitting on, and people haven't got a clue. So the die was set. I was now working. Before all of this, you mentioned the nightclubs. I worked in the nightclubs, and this paid a very, very, very good wage for quite a long time while I was setting up my hypnosis lifestyle, so to speak. So, and that's when you would have come down to Atmosphere in Birkenhead.
Rupert's Night, remember Atmospheres, yeah.
The Chelsea Reach, New Brighton, and a lot of other nightclubs.
Laura in America is going to be jumping up and down if we mention the Chelsea Reach, I'm sure.
Oh, yes. Well, I was the main anchor DJ there for quite a few years.
Really?
Yeah. And so I had a lot of fun in the music business. And that's where Mel and Kim came into it. But I worked with lots of them, George Benson and George McRae and lots of other, quality stars.
Did George McRae come to the Wirral then?
Yes, he did. Yeah, he performed in Atmosphere.
Really?
Rock Your Baby. Yeah.
Did Rock Your Baby? Probably the only thing he could do. He did another one. I Can Never Give You Up or something. I think, which was because wasn't Gwen McRae was supposed to be recording that, wasn't it? But she was ill on the day, and George recorded it instead, because that was the definitive record, really, wasn't it, of the summer of what, 74, 75, I think, something like that.
I mean, the 70s, 80s, 90s music was set the standards. There's no doubt about it. And the British were having so much success in the United States as well, with George Michael, and all the bands were amazing. So that was a scene in itself, which paid my bills, paid my mortgage at the time, while I was setting myself up as a hypnotist for greater and bigger things to come. So I started on doing the touring the UK as a comedy stage hypnotist, and I worked with a lot of very interesting
How did
people.
you hone your act then? How did you, I mean,
Well,
clearly you
well,
had
when
to
I was
think it through what
when
you're
I
going
was
to do.
working as a DJ, I had this. Well, I have the stage presence
Mm.
as an entertainer. I did a bit of acting as well, and I was in that environment where you put me in front of 1,000 people, and I feed off that energy. I absolutely love it. Where you get some people who would literally be frightened to death. That was that was a pleasure to me. It was absolutely, and it still is. But obviously, COVID's taken that away from me at the moment. But yeah, so I had the entertainment background, and then I studied the psychology and the hypnosis. And then I did quite a lot of research, and I put my own show together.
Well, just a very interesting aside point here.
Mm-hmm.
When did you first discover the power of hypnotism? You know, you'd read about it and everything else as well. When was the first time that you thought, no, this is something? Were you able to put somebody in a trance or something? Was there a kind of a road to Damascus moment when you thought, this is really powerful? This is not, you know, this is the real deal.
Well, now you've asked me this question. I wasn't going to tell you about it, but I
Oh, well,
will.
there you go.
It ties in with this Scottish illusionist in America. I finished work 1 o'clock in the morning. I was having a date with an American lady, and we were to meet after work, after the casino closed at 1 o'clock, and we were meeting in the bar disco. And this particular illusionist, when he'd had a few drinks, he was a bit obnoxious, and you didn't really want him around once he'd had a few. So I was sitting enjoying the company of this lovely American lady, and along comes this particular chap, and I thought, oh no, he's not going to leave us alone now, and he's just going to be a nuisance. And I said, he said to me, I can get that lady to leave you within 5 minutes. I said, well, what do you mean? And he said, I'll bet you $5. So she said, this American girl, I think she was from Cincinnati, she said to me, I'll bet you $500 I'm not leaving. I'm staying having a drink, a quiet drink with Alan. So when we agreed he would go away and leave us alone if he had 5 minutes of her time. So we took her to the next table, and she had the fixed gaze into his eyes. And within 5 minutes, she stood up, she walked over, zombie-like, looked at me like a robotic form and said, good night, Alan, good night, John, and left. And I said to this particular chap, I said, how did you do that? And he said, I hypnotized her. And I said, nonsense. He said, give me the $5 and I'll explain. So I had to give him the $5. That was the bet that we had. So I ended up spending the next couple of hours with this particular chap discussing hypnosis. So that was the pivotal moment. And I thought, and then when I came back to the UK, I was comparing in a nightclub in Wales, and there was a stage hypnotist on. And I compared as that, and everything came back, and I thought there really is something in this. So that's when I boarded the career, so to speak, of working as a comedy stage hypnotist. Now, I did quite a few TV shows using comedy here, Asia, Malaysia, Singapore. Obviously, my first television show was with the mogul Tony, the guy who had the hacienda in Manchester. He was
Tony, yeah.
Tony and Lucy Meacock. Lucy's still working for Granada, isn't she?
Yeah.
She's still an interview there, Lucy Meacock.
Yeah, he died. He died a few years ago, didn't he?
Died a few years ago. Well, my very first TV show, I was a guest on his show.
Right.
And that was an eye opener. That got me really interested in television and what I do. And since then, I've gone on to have many TV shows all over the world, which we can discuss later on. So touring the theatres, the TV, the working men's clubs in Liverpool and Scotland, Wales, all over the place, is where I basically honed my skills as a stage hypnotist. So using the power of the mind, the psychological control of the mind, with an entertaining background, to put it together, and that's where you get comedy stage from. And that's what I did for many years.
But it must be quite pressurized, because there you are, a single person in front of an audience of lots of people.
Mm-hmm.
And it's how do you know that you're going to be in a position that there will be people susceptible in the audience to doing this? Or do you always find that there always will be people?
That is a great question, because there's a certain amount of, not apprehension, but when you go onto a stage, the nerves backstage are horrendous, you know, and I can control it now. I've worked out, because you can burn yourself out if you're not careful before you get on the stage. And as you know, as Nikola Tesla said, energy, frequency, vibration. You know, if you channel that right, you can do a lot of things with it. But so when I'm introduced to the stage, now I've worked with small audiences and I've worked with 1,000 people plus. And the numbers game is important here, because the more people in the audience, mathematically, there's going to be a larger percentage of people who are susceptible to hypnosis. Most people can be hypnotized, not everybody, excuse me. And I jest that the categories of persons that cannot be hypnotized are drunkards, mentally insane people, and idiots. And I say that in jest. But in fairness, there's an element of truth in that, because they can't hold the concentration span that's required to go into a hypnotic trance. So most stage hypnotists use the hand clasp method, where they get the audience to lock their hands together like this, and literally within 4 or 5 minutes, a good stageman and showmanship can actually have people's hands so locked together. Even skeptics, even people that really don't believe in it, cannot move their hands. And then that is a very, very quick induction method to tell you, it tells me that that person is susceptible to hypnosis. So then I welcome them to the stage, and there's lots of comedy bits and innuendos and all sorts of things flying around at this point. And then I will use my judgment to choose about 12 people who I believe will be very good candidates for the stage. So then I'd sit them down, I'd get rid of everybody else, I'd get them to unclasp their hands. Now I've got 12 people on stage, and I would go through a 10-minute induction of hypnotizing them, get them to close their eyes, play a special piece of music, get them to focus, and literally within 10-15 minutes, I'll have between 6 to 9 people out of 12 deeply hypnotized. So when I click my fingers, they will literally fall asleep. So then once I've got, and don't forget that when you work in stage, in the entertainment, you can't afford to be wasting time on on taking them into deeper trances. You've got to get it done very quickly, because this process in itself is amazing. If you know, for the viewers that haven't seen somebody being hypnotized on stage, and that in itself is entertaining, because literally within 5 or 10 minutes, 12, even 15 minutes, these people have gone from saying, you can't hypnotize me, sleep, and they're literally out of it, you know? So I honed my skills in the nightclubs, and trust me, it's the best way to learn before you go to the grandeur of royal families, which I've done, and television shows and everything else. You've got to learn your trade somewhere. And I did it the hard way, working in all these backstreet clubs in Liverpool and Manchester and all over the UK, really. I had a couple of good agents who got me a lot of work.
Did you ever get hairy situations where people afterwards resented what you'd done and thought, you know, you compromised them in some way, made them look idiots?
That's another great question, Tony, because the answer to that is I never leave myself open to do something that I wouldn't be happy with. Mm-hmm. The show is cheeky, but it's not crude or rude. And I think people make more fools of themselves singing karaoke. If you've been into a bar and watched karaoke and thought, oh my goodness, you know, they make more fools. And mine is clever. I mean, I can take a Manchester United supporter, a diehard Manchester United supporter, and in 2 minutes get him to worship Liverpool and run around the audience and kiss the members on the heads because they think that Liverpool have just scored against Man United, like the footballers do on the field when they score a goal. So it's fascinating, it really is. So, I mean, hypnosis in itself is absolutely fascinating. And I've got that many experiences. I've written a few books about it, you know, but it is absolutely fabulous. It really is. So this was a great big part of the career, working the stage as a comedy stage hypnotist. And it also took me to a lot of countries. It took me to Luxembourg. It took me to Germany, working for the troops in Germany, and all the positive spin-offs that come from this. You get treated like a celebrity. I was working in, and I can't remember the name of the German town now where we have a base. I know I flew into Bremen and we traveled from there. And the next day they said, you know, your flight's not till this evening. The British Army, would you like a British Army tour of Belsen concentration camp? And it was like, wow, you know, so, and that tied in with me visiting Anne Frank's house in Amsterdam many years ago, story complete. But so, you know, the privileges and the bonus of being an entertainer and traveling around in all of these different countries, you know, I saw things and met people and experienced things that, you know, that not many people do really. And at the same time, all this was going on, I was at flight school training to be a pilot.
I did not know that.
Yeah, you see, there's lots of things.
I know.
So yeah, I got my wings in 1983, flew for a couple of years privately, and then decided it was too expensive. I got myself hitched with an old thatched cottage in Bebington. It was like 500 years old, and it was haunted. You know the one in Lower Bebington.
In Lower Bebington, yes, I do indeed.
Old cottage, thatched cottage. That was mine. I lived there for a few years. Yeah.
Really, because that is one of the premier places to have in Bebington Village. That's a beautiful.
We can talk about that another time, because this story I want to talk with Sarah about, this shared precog dream that we had, which came true. It was just amazing. We'll touch on that later, Sarah. Okay, I want your feedback on that. Is that okay?
Yeah, excellent. I can't wait to hear about that.
Right. Okay. So yeah, so working the stage, fabulous lifestyle. Money was pretty good as well, you know, and getting to meet so many. And I used to do a lot in the corporate markets and universities. Universities was one of my big customers, because I used to, in September, October, I used to travel the length and breadth of Great Britain, touring with the student unions, and they were the best ever shows, because students are just up for it big time. You don't have to work hard to get 12, 15 people hypnotized in 10 minutes. And the fun that you can have, you can imagine it, all these young freshers coming in from all parts of the UK who've have never been, have just been cut from mummy's strings, and all of a sudden they've got their own independence, and they have. So university, I think, is a wonderful place for people to get a good grounding in life. You went to university, didn't you,
Yes,
Tony?
I did, yeah.
Which one?
I went to Warwick and then did postgrad at London School of Economics.
Yeah, I've the LSE, is that correct?
That's the LSE, yeah.
Yes, I've worked there. I performed for them there.
Oh, really?
Yeah, about 15 years ago.
Oh, right.
That was an interesting evening in itself. So yeah, this time my journey in life was was doing the university tours, the rag balls, corporate market, corporate entertainment, still doing the cabaret clubs, but not doing pubs anymore. From this point comes a point where you transcend from that level, and you and obviously it dictates about financially, dictates what you can earn in a pub to what you can earn in the corporate market, and then hiring theatres, which is what I did. I did quite a few tours of the UK, doing the large theatres, and that's when you know that you've sort of made it, when you can draw people in time and time again back into the theatre. But all along this journey, Tony, I was asked by people virtually every show, can you make me thin? Can you stop me smoking? Can you take this phobia away from me? So I would never charge people for helping them. And I did for many, I think it was about 15 years. I was helping people with therapy, not charging them, and sometimes not even getting a thank you afterwards. So in 2002, I think it was, 2002, I got invited to go, my agent in London invited me to go to Malta. And we met up there last year, didn't we?
We did indeed.
Yes. So, and we're going back again in June.
Hopefully. We're going to miss each other, aren't we?
Missing each other by a day.
By a day, yeah.
By a day. So I said earlier on about one of the big turning points in my life was being invited to work in America on the cruise ships. That was a life changer. There's no doubt about that. But then the next really, really big one came in 2000, I think it was 2002, when my agent asked me, would I go to Malta? I mean, at this point, I was traveling internationally anyway, and I'd worked in America, worked in Egypt on 3 occasions, worked in India, and that was an interesting experience. We must remind me to talk about India later. That is an amazing place. Bandra West in Mumbai. Oh, let me just cut into this.
Yeah, go on.
Before we get into Malta, as I say, I've done corporate shows and I've done theatre shows in Mumbai. I was the most broadcast hypnotist in the world on UTV movies when I worked in Bandra West, because they showed my commercials and they did my interviews. They shadowed me around for the week. And they made a show about it, and they broadcast it on UTV movies, which went throughout the whole of India, which was fabulous. So it's a little sort of claim to fame, the most broadcast hypnotist in the world, which I trade on now and again.
And I know you. Wow.
Yeah. No, that was fun. But no, the interesting thing about it, when you're used to in the UK and in the West, when you're selling a theatre, this is in the makings for 6 to 12 months. So you know what theatre you're going to be working at. And that gives the mechanics, the mechanisms to sell tickets, bums on seats in the theatres. So you know the month before you're live in a theatre, how many bums on seats you've got. I got invited by an agent to go and do 3 theatre shows in Mumbai. I got there and I still didn't have a working visa. When I got there, I said to the agent management, I said, how many tickets have you sold for these theatre shows? And he said, we haven't sold any yet. Right. And it's 3 days.
Oh.
The first show in Bandra West, Mumbai. And I'm worried sick. So anyway, he said, I always remember, he said, don't worry about it. He said, this is India. Right. When the tickets went on sale, the 3 theatre 3 theatres were sold out literally within an afternoon.
And how many tickets are you talking about then?
About 400 or 500 per show.
Wow.
Sold out 2 days before. 2 days before. Where in the world can that happen?
Yeah.
This is India, he said. This is India. Sorry, let's go back to Malta. So okay. My agent said to me, Alan, can you go and do a corporate show for MaltaCon on the beautiful island of Gozo? Have you been there, Tony?
Yes, yeah, we went when we last saw you. We were coming in from Gozo.
Right, okay.
We stayed at Tar Seng.
No, I don't know that now.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So I was invited to go to do, and I didn't know anything about this company. It's called EM Promotions, a lady called Marcette Busatil. And so she did a research, and out of all the hypnotists in the UK, she's a very clever lady. She decided to choose me to come over and perform the show. So, which I did, and it was that well received that they hadn't had a hypnotist working in Malta for many, many years. So I came over, and literally I was a household star, literally, overnight. So I did very well with this corporate show, and she said, can you come back next week? and do a television show for us? And I said, yeah, it's going to be tied in with a charity called here we go, my Maltese language now, Ratsatil Hadidiyah, which is Park of Friendship, and it was a disabled charity. And I was working, which I attached myself to for many years from then, and I raised hundreds of thousands of pounds, euro. It was the Malta currency at the time. It wasn't euros, it was before lira it was. So I went back the following week, and overnight sensation. I was doing things with therapy where you would get people, and it was all live. And these days it was live TV. It wasn't a pre-record, which I'm really happy with for pre-records, because if you don't get it right, you can do it again. When it's live TV, it's bang, you're out live, you're on set, and there's no error. There's no way for errors. It's got to be dead right, which it always was. So I was doing things like therapeutic things like finding out people who had phobias, let's say cockroaches. So we would have a big glass tank of cockroaches, find somebody that was terrified of them, film them just before I brought them onto the stage, then hypnotize them literally within seconds, and then get them to put their hands in the tank of cockroaches and let all the cockroaches run all over them. And people are going, oh my goodness. So we were mixing that with a comedy show. So I got a format which was unique, where I was working doing the comedy sets and in between, taking people deep into the mind and removing their phobias, their fears, and everything else. So overnight success story, and I became very popular in Malta. And she said, can you come back again next week? So this continued, and for many, many years. And then going back about, I think it was about 10 years ago. Yeah, about 10 years ago. Marcette, well, she became my manager in Malta and still is now. And she said, Alan, she said, look, you need to come over here and start helping people. There's only so much comedy you can do, in one country the size of Malta. But there's a lot of people asking me, to stop smoking, weight loss, stress, anxiety, fears, phobias, PTSD, historic child sexual abuse, you name it, the amount of, I was so much in demand. But I thought, well, let's give it a go. So about 10 years ago, I went over and we booked a theatre where we were doing big group sessions for people who wanted to stop smoking. And we've sold out 3 nights to 600 people, which is it's a lot of people coming for therapy, 600 people in one night. It was hard work, but I got great responses. So then the die was set then, whereas I was invited every single month. So for the last 10, even more years, I've traveled every single month to Malta and continued to do up until COVID kicked in. But I've now got clearance to go back, and obviously we've got Brexit now, so the laws are changing a little bit there now, and also I don't know what the COVID restrictions are going to be when I fly out on the 3rd of June, so the die was set then, working as a hypnotherapist. Now, I love what I do, but I get a really, really, really good sensation, a really good buzz out of helping people using the power of the mind. And some of the people that I've had tears in my eyes many, many times with clients in this country, UK, and in Europe, who, you hear the life story and things need to change. Suicide cases are the worst. When you've got, young children who their parents are bringing them along because they've got psychological issues. They've tried every single avenue, they're getting nowhere. And, they see me as a healer, literally. And fortunately, I can give you an example here. I had a lady come to see me who had a stoma fitted in a tummy. She'd had bowel cancer. Now, this is confidential. Nobody knows who I'm talking about here. And she'd had a stoma, and she couldn't live with it. I didn't know this at the time. She came to see if I could psychologically reformat her mind using hypnosis to get her to accept the stoma. So, because she just couldn't live with the bag, she just couldn't live with having a colostomy bag. So I could see she was distressed with it. So anyway, I worked my magic, and I worked very hard for her. And then she came back the month later for a follow-up. And I said, how did you get on? And she had a big smile on her face. And she said, you know, she said, I'm so glad I came to see you. She said, you were my last port of call. And if this didn't work, I'd already put in plans to take my life.
Whoa.
And when someone tells you that, eye-to-eye contact, it was mixed senses of, you've saved somebody's life, but at the same time, it was I'm just getting emotional goosebumps just thinking about it now. So she came for a follow-up session, but to say, I don't need the session. I've just come to say thank you for saving her life, you know? And it's when you get those little things in life that make it all worthwhile. It's like you're being tested, you're put on the spot. And I'll tell you another story now, which happened while I was on set. The TV program I worked on many times was a TV show called Charabanc. Not in the Charabanc as we mean in the UK, get on the Charabanc to Blackpool, the coach. It was a fabulous. It was the most watched show in Malta. When even the people that didn't like it used to watch it because the topics were just amazing. Pepe Azzopardi, who is the show presenter, we became very good friends, and we bounced off each other like you and I do, Tony. And we, got on very well. And I was a guest on that show many times. And I even get adults coming up to me now saying, "Oh, Mr. Bates, can you sign this autograph? I grew up watching you." And I've got all the videos of when you used to come to Malta, doing the television shows. But another time which makes the job worthwhile as a therapist was I was literally 3 minutes queue. I'd been to makeup. I was mic'd up. I was treading the boards behind stage, so to speak, waiting for my call time. I could see through the wings that the show had opened up. It was live. And I had this guy on the opposite side of the barrier. As I walked one way, he walked with me. And as I walked back, he walked back. And I thought, is he a serial killer? Because some of the things I'm doing are life-changing, and people, you never know people's mindsets. So, I was that psyched up, ready to go on stage. I thought, I can't go until I've defused the situation with this man. So the security followed me. I went across the barrier and I said, "Are you all right, sir?" And as soon as I said that to him, he just folded within himself and went, "Oh, thank you, Mr. Bates, for talking to me." And I said, "Look, got to make this really quick. What's your problem? What's wrong?" I said, "I can see you're agitated. Quickly, I'm literally 2 minutes away now from live television. What's wrong?" And he said, "I'm destitute." And he said, "And I need dental work having done to my," he said, "all my teeth are falling out. I'm in terrible pain, but I'm that scared to go to the dentist. Can you help me? It's a phobia." So I said, "Look," I said, "I'll book you in." So I get my manager, Marcy, to book you in. This was on a Friday night. So book you in on Monday. And he went, "Oh, thank you very much." He said, "There's only one thing." He says, "I haven't got any money." And I just, one look, and I knew he was telling the truth. I said, "What do you need money for?" And he looked at me. I said, "You don't need money to come and see me." I said, "This is on me. This is on Marcy." I said, "It'd be my pleasure to help you." And the gratitude it's like as if you're getting tested. Do you understand what I mean? So how could anybody refuse and turn somebody away that needed that help? Anyway, quick story. Monday, I said to him, "Not only are you coming free, but you're coming as my first client on the Monday morning." So I put an extra slot in and I made him my first client, and he came to see me. He had his whole life on a piece of paper. He was one of 11 children. His father was an alcoholic and abused him. His mother passed away, and all the children went into care. He went into the church, and he was filled with paedophile priests. That's all I'm going to say. And I helped change his life, and the reward from that is just amazing. That's not the end of the story here, because I didn't charge him for that. Obviously, it was free. That afternoon, I had a very, very wealthy, and I was told who she was. I can't mention any names because I do get people in government coming to see me as well. This lady came to see me with a fear of a phobia of flying, and she had business trips that needed to be undertaken that week. So at the end of the session, when she come to pay, she gave me €100 tip and said, "This is for you." And I said, "I can't take this money off you." And she said, "No, I insist that you take this because this might come in to replace somebody that doesn't have the money that I have." And I thought to myself, oh my goodness, synchronicity. Look at that. That morning I'd done a free session and I'd been paid for it in the afternoon.
That is simply wonderful. Absolutely incredible.
The true stories. I've published quite a few books, and I put in I've obviously had to change names and select scenarios and things of the people that come. I mean, while we're talking about Malta, it's not just all about helping people who psychologically need help. It's also, was it the year before last? I had a little old lady that come to see me who had misplaced €4,000 in a house, and she had this money, but she didn't know where it was. She so I think senility was starting to set in, and she'd hidden this money, and she hid it so well that she'd forgotten where she placed this, and she wasn't too sure whether a housemaid had stolen it. So she came to see me for a session of hypnosis. I managed to find out where the money was, and it was down a little cubby hole at the side of the wardrobe.
So how did you do that? What technique did you use to do that? Did you regress her back or what?
Yeah, use regression, which we're going to talk about in a moment anyway, because that's another big part of my life. More so when Derek Acorda was alive. So that amused me when this little old lady, rang up my agent and said, "Yeah, we found money, €4,000 stuffed down the skirting board at the back of the wardrobe." So that was fun.
That must be priceless, that realization that you have really changed somebody's life. That there's the kind of feedback you get from that must be extraordinary. And being able to help people in the way you do is just wonderful. So you're now doing something, you're giving back and improving people's lives. The comedy and stuff is really great fun and everything else as well, but you're now using hypnotism in a way to really help people. Which
it was my calling, that's for sure. Absolutely. I've stopped thousands upon thousands, and I mean this because I can back it up with the statistics. Because when we're doing the big group sessions, so I've stopped thousands of people from smoking, thousands of people help lose weight, and also stress and anxiety, which is the big one nowadays. Because going back to the clubland days, to when I was cutting my teeth, so to speak, learning the trade, it was all smokers. You'd walk into a venue that, Sarah might not remember this, a bit young for this, but going back years ago, you'd walk into a venue and you could cut the air that was that blue with a knife, with smokers. So years ago, it was all people wanting to stop smoking. Nowadays, there's more people suffering with stress, anxiety, depression, for lots of different lifestyle reasons. So that's one of my biggest things at the moment. So really, Tony, over the last few years, the touring comedy has stopped, and it's virtually all hypnotherapy, using the power of the mind to cure people. And it's a very, very, very powerful tool.
Of course, the issue here is as well, if you can train somebody or hypnotize somebody to not want to smoke anymore, but that is something they can physically do. Whereas the issue of somebody with anxiety, you have to take away presumably the source of that anxiety. But sometimes if it's, say, money worries, you can't, can you? You can only stop them focusing on the issue rather than curing the issue itself. Or am I being naive there?
You'd be surprised the amount of people. I think my view in life, my experience with my work, plus my experience in life, the university of life, so to speak, I believe most people have hang-ups of some description. Now, it depends on how you manage them. and how you deal with it. If it's something that you can cope with, whether it's economic, whether it's relationship breakdown, whether it's narcissism is a massive one at the moment. I have a lot of people come in to see me in narcissistic relationships, and I've helped a lot of people. So no matter what they're suffering with, if it's manageable, they can get by. In the old days, they'd say, pull yourself together. You know, nowadays you don't say that. I certainly don't say that, because that is not the right thing to say, because to somebody that's got a debilitating illness, mental illness, or a psychological illness, if they can manage it, fine. But if they can't, they need help. And that's when I step in. I've got a great track record, and I can help people that mainstream medicine cannot help with. And it was to such an extent that I got invited to have afternoon tea with the president of Malta, and Guido DeMarco. He's passed away now. He's a lovely old man, Guido DeMarco. And he said to me, he said, "Oh, Mr. Bates," I went with Marcette, my manager, agent, and she said to me, she said, "Who would have thought that an email to your agency in London would bring us together, sitting having afternoon tea with the president of Malta?" You know, absolutely. And I went on then to become friends with prime ministers as well, so that was quite fun. And it's interesting when you go to parties, and Joseph Muscat, who was the last prime minister of Malta, I went to a wedding a couple of years ago, and he came over and he said, "Oh, Mr. Bates, nice to see you again." You know, and he's thinking, you know, and the interesting part about this, Tony, is when I was at school, my headmaster came up to me and he said one day, he said, and I think this is a big quote, which I must put in at some point. And I did make quite a few notes to discuss things, but I'm pulling things out as we go along. My headmaster said to me, and I'll never forget, he said, "Bates," he said, "you are going nowhere in life." And I remember doing this, sold out the whole of Malta was watching this TV show. And you've got the transmitter, you've got the advertising section, and they're all on the keyboards doing certain things. You've got the runners, you've got the producers, and the whole show is my show. And I'm standing backstage ready to go on. I've mic'd up, I'm ready to go. Everything's focused, production team's in place, everything's ready, live TV. And I thought, "Bates, you're going nowhere in life." And that brought a huge smile to my face. And it's, "Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome from England, Alan Bates." And at the same time I said that, I said to myself, "Bates, you're going nowhere in life." So, you know, you can't predict these things. I've had a very fruitful life. I really have. I mean, this journey has taken me to places that you wouldn't know. Here's one for you. How many people have met the Yorkshire Ripper, Peter Sutcliffe,
Go on.
Ronnie Cray?
Tell us more.
I got invited to go to Broadmoor Mental Hospital as a therapist. Now, this is a great story. I've got the year here. I can actually dig the year out for you. Just bear with me a sec. If I can find the year, I've made some notes on this. It'll come to me. Yes, here we go. Oh, no, the year is not there. Broadmoor, a category A hospital, not a prison, hospital for the most dangerous psychopathic people that we have in this country. And I was invited to go, and it was an absolutely humbling, amazing experience. You go through all the security, you get vetted and everything else. And I was with magistrates, I was with mental health experts, people who needed to have a grounding on how the institution worked. So I was fabulously interested. So the first thing they do is they sit you down and they give you a talk about what you can do, what you can't do. You're allowed, if the patients want to talk to you, you can talk to them, no problems. But do not mention the medication, do not mention why they're there, but anything else is perfectly okay to talk about. So we get to talk about the financial aspect, how much it costs to run Broadmoor. There's also Rampton, which is another Cat A mental hospital. So they sit down and they explain how security works, how the system works. And it was interesting because the mental health nurses, the nurses, you can call them if you want prison guards, but you can't call them prison guards. They are nurses, mental health nurses, but they're normally quite big people. And they're always, I noticed they always, when they get the guided tour around, they're always standing against the wall, the back against the wall, always. And they're not eye to eye contact. So they're talking to you and they're looking around like this all the time, even though they're having a conversation with a small group. And that is what's trained into them, to be on their guard. Because this particular chap who gave us the tour, it was an amazing tour. He said to me, you never know. He said, you can get a rapport. You know, I come to work here every day. So you're going to have rapport with these patients. You've got to. You know, and you can sit down, you can talk football, you can talk life, you can talk all sorts about them. But always remember, never forget the reason why they are in there. Because literally you can think you're having the most friendliest, wonderful conversation, and they can turn on you and it could be fatal. So they're always back to the wall all the time. I thought that's something that stuck in my mind. So anyway, one of the highlights, well, it's an awful thing to say, but everybody that's been to Broadmoor as a professional visitor has been interested in Peter Sutcliffe, the notorious serial killer who murdered, I think it was 14 women. And he was on a ward called Henley Ward. Now, as we walked past Henley Ward, who's walking out of his room? Peter Sutcliffe makes a beeline to me. Oh. All right, mate, morning. And I went, good morning. And you just make, you know, pleasantries. How are you doing today? I'm all right, thanks. He said, yeah, he said, I'm okay. He said, a bit fed up. He said, but I'm okay. So to look at this man, you would never think that he could intimidate anybody. It was just crazy to even think, you know, of the crimes that he committed were just absolutely diabolical. And then 2 minutes later, I bump into, was it Reggie or Ronnie Cray? Which one was it that was in Broadmoor? I always get confused with.
Well, they were twins, weren't they? So it's not surprising.
The notorious gangsters in London. Well, they've both passed away now, haven't they? Yeah. And he came up to me. He made a beeline to me. That I must have a magnet, you know, drawing these people. And he came up to me. The first thing he said is, so in a Cockney accent, so where you from, mate? And I said, well, actually, I'm from Liverpool. And walked away.
Wow.
So, yeah, so that was quite interesting. And, just to get a guided tour around Broadmoor was exceptional. And it opened my eyes to the way people's minds work. But they stopped doing these tours because several years after my experience, somebody got because they have workshops in there, and somebody got a screwdriver and stabbed Peter Sutcliffe through the eye, and he lost one of his eyes. You might remember that.
Yes, I do. Yes.
From then on, he was. They stopped. I think they stopped doing these tours, but it was fabulously interesting. I mean, it was open only to invitation, and you know what I saw in that. I mean, there was. I got chatting with quite a few of them, and I went into a leather workshop where they were making things, and there was tools in there, you know, sharp tools. Every single one of them was counted in and counted out, so they were taking nothing out with them. Excuse me. And I was chatting to this guy, and my friend who works in there, he said, "Do you know who you were talking to?" And I said, "I haven't got a clue." And basically, this particular guy had. Was babysitting as a teenager for a young family, and when they went out, the kids were shouting and screaming, and he got knives out the kitchen and chopped them to pieces.
Jeez.
A long time ago. And then came back in. The parents came back, and he was watching TV, eating chocolate like this. He said, "Everything okay?" And he just carried on watching TV, eating chocolate with two dead children upstairs.
Good Lord.
Yeah, so it was just.
It's one of these things, isn't it, when you realize in life that there are people that are just different in some way, where there seems to be something wrong somewhere. And I remember many years ago, I went to a party in Battersea, and I was introduced to a few people there. I knew some quite dodgy-ish people in London when I was younger. I mean, I knew people who were involved with I knew people who were involved with the Richardsons. So in which case my association with the Richardsons would not have gone down terribly well with the Krays. And I remember once drinking in the Blind Beggar, which is one of the pubs that the Krays used to drink in. That's where they killed Jack the Hat McVitie. And we thought it was a theme pub, myself and an American friend of mine. And we walked in there and realized it wasn't a theme pub. It actually was a real East End pub. And they refused to serve us and told us, back out now through the door. Don't turn around, just back out through the door, which we did. But one of the things about this party in Battersea, and one of the guys I was introduced to was singularly the scariest person I've ever met in my life. And the only thing I can define about this guy is his eyes were dead. That's all I can describe. There was just something about his eyes. He was only a little guy. He was like us. He wasn't a big guy, but there was something disturbing about him. And it was only the next day I got talking to the person. We stayed over at the person's house whose party it was. And I said, that guy really disturbed me. And he said, yes, it's not surprising. He's known as the burner. And I went, right. And he said, yeah. There are lockup garages around South London, and he's employed to torture people to death using a blowtorch. And this is what he does. This is what he earned a living doing. And you think, my God, you feel like touching evil, touching something. Thomas Sheridan, who's going to be a future guest on this show, talks about these people, people that seem to be just not human, or if they are, there's no empathy or something.
The brains are wired differently to ours.
Right.
Because I mean, if you go back to the Second World War and Hitler, and there's one thing going to war, protecting your country, but then there's another aspect where the Jewish situation. How could, if you had to go and fight for your country and you were put into Auschwitz, which I've been to as well, and have to do, I just couldn't do that. My consciousness would not allow me to do that. My conscience would not allow me to do that. But people's brains are wired differently, Tony. They really are. They reckon that one person every 100 people have issues that could be considered. What's the word now? Peter Sutcliffe.
Psychopathic.
Psychopathic tendencies. One in every 100 people. Now that's scary, that, isn't it?
And it means you're going to know these people, or you're going to come across them in times. I mean, there's incidents when I was living in South London, 2 or 3 occasions I witnessed events that I thought, oh my God, how did you do that? And you think, my God, these people just have a different level. But of course, we know the Stanley Milgram experiments, whereby, people, how far will they take orders and react to orders? But changing the subject very slightly, one of the things that you were discussing before, the guys from the Wirral, I had the same sensation you described before you went on stage. I did an event in New York around about 14 or 15 years ago. And the next day I was walking along Fifth Avenue, just minding my own business. And a woman comes across and she turns around and she says, "You're Anthony Peake, aren't you?" And I said, "Yes." And she said, "I was going to be coming to your event yesterday at the last night at the Roosevelt Hotel, but I couldn't make it. What's the chances of me just seeing you on the street?" And then she walked away. And I suddenly thought, my God, and you suddenly realize, I was started a secondary modern school before I got to Wirral Grammar School and everything. Yeah. And you suddenly thought, God, you've come a long way from a C stream of a secondary modern school.
I can add to that, Tony, because I was performing in the, excuse me a sec, excuse me. I was performing in Singapore, one of my favorite places. I've been there many times, and looking forward to going back out to Asia very soon, actually. We're opening an office in Jakarta, more about that later. Interesting, I was working at the Tanglin Club, which is a colonial British club there. And after I'd done the show, which was very well received, we went to Chinatown to eat. So it's about 1 o'clock in the morning, and I'm talking to this young American girl. She was a lot younger than me, but we were just talking.
Deja vu.
Yes, yes.
1 o'clock in the morning, it's an American girl.
Yeah, it is, isn't it? Yeah, you're quite right.
I'm gonna
Certain sequences.
Was she from
Yeah,
Cincinnati?
so I'm just talking in a group, and there's a young American lady there, just chatting away, and she had a firm interest in the paranormal, the esoteric, and parapsychology. So she proceeds to tell me that she says, "Oh yeah, I follow a guy in England. You might have heard him, a guy called Anthony Peake." And I actually, when I said he's a friend of mine, she didn't believe me, and I got my phone out and said, "Look at his number. Shall we call him?" And she went, "Oh yeah." So I called you, Singapore time. I think is it might be 6 hours time difference, and you didn't answer. I'd had a few drinks because we were in Chinatown. We'd had something to eat, and I thought this is going to be so cool. You're going to be so, you're going to be so delighted that somebody's following you from Singapore, an American in Singapore, or you're going to be really upset because I've woke you up in the middle of the night. But, no, that was very interesting.
Well, that segues perfectly, isn't it, to the synchronicity you were talking about in terms of us meeting.
Yes, that's right. Because my wife, or my wife to be at the time, sorry, I'm going ahead of things there. I was doing past life regression with Derek Akora. We started. That's something else we'll talk about in a moment, because that was another major turning point in my career road. To talk about that in a minute, blow you away, literally blow you away. So you were advertised at my local library. You were giving a talk on Is the Life After Death? So I thought, I've got to go and see this chap. And that's when we met for the first time. Mm. And then after that, we became friends, and I shared some of your friends, Dr. Alan Roberts, who's hopefully listening this afternoon. And
has been a guest on this program as well.
Great guy, yeah. We're really good friends, actually. And that's all due to the synchronicity of us meeting. You know, the laws of chaos. You go down one way, you'll meet so-and-so. But if you don't go that way and you go that way, you're not going to meet so-and-so. So, laws of chaos. Yeah. Oh, I mean, the things that happen. In fact, should we discuss the regression side now?
Yeah, would you prefer to go into the dream thing with Sarah now, and then we'll do the regression immediately afterwards?
Yeah, I would love to, because off air before I asked her a question that I would love an answer to, more information. So I'll put it to you this way, Sarah, and the viewers. Going back, I'm trying to think how many years it would be. It'd be the 1980s. It was a Sunday night, and this is the old thatched cottage which I'd bought. And it was built in, I think, 1650. Oliver Cromwell stayed in there. It's in the library records. He stayed in there. Yeah, and this is your locality, around the corner from your family home.
Yeah.
Oliver Cromwell stayed in my home. He wasn't my guest. And he quartered his horses.
He'd probably kicked all your birds out, wouldn't he?
Yeah. Quartered his horses at St. Andrew's Church around the corner. Anyway, Sunday night, I'm with my girlfriend, who went on to be my wife, my first wife. What happened was, it was about 3 o'clock in the morning on a Sunday. We both woke up at the same time. And I said, oh, I've had a really strange dream. And Michelle said to me, oh, I've just had a really strange dream too. So we both woke up at the same time having a strange dream. So I said, well, what was your dream about? And she said, I had a dream about one of your friends. And I said, I've just had a dream. I'm not going to name him. I said, well, I've just had a dream about one of my friends. What was the dream? She said, I dreamt he went to jail. And I said, I did as well. So we both woke up at the same time, dreaming the same dream about this person going to jail. And we thought, there's got to be something in this. This is really, really unusual. So we didn't tell this particular chap, because I don't associate with villains and bad people and negative people. And he wasn't, this particular guy at the time. He was a decent sort. So we thought, we're going to tell somebody in our inner outer circle not to go back to him, which we did. So that point was made now. Okay. A year later, I put the TV on, Granada News, and this particular chap had been arrested on the M6 motorway with 10 million counterfeit US dollars. And the irony of it is, my printer, who's still my printer today, made them. And his
you
wife,
don't associate with dodgy people then.
And his wife was a bank manager. She knew nothing about it.
Wow.
Now the story is fascinating. I put this script together, I put the synopsis together for a TV drama because it's all based on a true story, starting with our dream, which in the end, Sarah, came to fruition. He went to jail.
Mm.
Shall I finish the story and then you can explain what you view on this? Do you know, I've never really spoke to anybody. I mean, I've told people the story, but I've never asked questions about how this has worked. How, you know, what energy, Nikola Tesla, vibration, energy, frequency, vibration. So what basically, I'll cut it to the chase, the story. This chap I knew, who was, I was friendly with him. He went over to Marbella in Spain, and he got mixed up in the wrong crowd. And there was a London Cockney gangster who had a yellow Ferrari and was splashing his money around. And he said, I'm having a party at my villa tonight. Would you like to come? So, you know, he accepted the invitation. He went to this party, and it was full of gangsters, drug dealers, obnoxious characters, all sorts of people. And there was cocaine, prostitutes, you name it. This party was going on big time with all these bad dudes. And the guy who had the Ferrari, the host of the party, said to my friend, how can we do business together? And he said, can you get counterfeit notes? Excuse me. Can you get counterfeit money? Bring it over to Spain. We will then buy hashish, bring it into the country using counterfeit American dollars, good ones I may add, and then we sell the drugs, and that's where we launder the money. So my poor friend said, oh yeah, that sounds like a great idea. I'll speak to my printer. I'll speak to Alan Bates's printer. So anyway, it all goes on. It's all happened now. He's driving down the M6 motorway, heading down south. They get lifted by all the special squad with the machine guns and everything. And he got arrested, went to jail, went to court. And in court, it turns out that Mr. Party Host guy was MI5. And the judge saw it as entrapment. And instead of getting 8 years, he got 8 months, and he only ended up doing about 4 weeks by the time it came through.
Wow.
So entrapment. So the element of the story is the premonition he was going to jail, which he did, but it also has the elements of sex, drugs, rock and roll, everything else. True story. It would make a great TV drama based on a true story. And just to finish that off, the night before he got lifted, he was in a bar. I was with him in a bar having drinks. He was drinking champagne and he had a Mercedes Sports. And he said afterwards, after he came out of jail, he said, I should have saw the writing on the wall. He said, because I came out of Flatfoot Sam's. Remember the bar in Hoylake?
No, I don't know that one.
There was a very trendy bar called Flatfoot Sands in Hoylake, little coastal town. And that night he had drank copious amounts. It was well over the limit. He was driving home that night, and the police, and it was all over the road, the police were right behind him. And he said all of a sudden they just backed off and pulled in a side road and let him go, because the intelligence services were going to lift him the next day. So they radioed through to control to say, pull that uniform car out, take it out. Under no situation, do not stop that vehicle, because they'd had the whole operation ready to be executed the next day. Good. And he was driving home all over the road, and he got home with that, you know. So it's a true story. And I've not seen him since those days, so I don't know what he's doing, but I've not mentioned his name and not mentioned my printer's name. And we move on. Sarah, can you answer that question, please? What was going on with our shared precog dream?
Well, one thing that I think does happen is that proximity of actually being in bed with someone tends to mean that you can share dreams. I do think there's almost like a collective field of consciousness that you can enter into when you dream so close to somebody. What were the details of the dream other than your friend going to prison? Was there any more information in it about what he went to prison for, or any of the circumstances?
No, it was just a dream about a certain person, a named person going to jail. And we both woke up at the same time, dreaming the same dream about the same person going to jail. 12 months later, he did.
I do think there's elements often with these things of you having contact with your higher self and your higher knowledge, and that there may have been certain traits that he possessed of like getting led astray or hanging out with the wrong crowd that might have led you to think that. I mean, there might have been more specific incidences than that as well. But I guess I do think that there is such a thing as the collective consciousness, and I kind of see reality as being, like I describe it, as like a spider's web, where you can kind of reflect upon future events and past events simultaneously if you're in the right state of mind. So yeah, I mean, there are all kinds of interesting aspects to that, and I'm not sure, having not dreamt it myself, what I would make of it specifically as being a clear-cut recognition of the future.
There's more chance of winning the Euro lottery, isn't there, though, than
one of the things I'd come in here and I'd apply my analysis to this is, to me, it sounds like a classic Dunn dream. John William Dunn wrote in 1927 a book called An Experiment with Time. And in that book, he suggested that we all have precognitive dreams on a regular basis. It's just that we either don't remember them, or they become so embroidered by the subconscious that the actual salient details of the precognition become mixed in together. Now, I would argue, and in my talks I do this quite regularly, that I think that there's a great deal of evidence for that. And your example, I think, is a classic example of this, because what we do is, I would argue, applying my daemon eidolon dyad, the idea that there is part of your subconscious, which is your daemon, which is your game player. Indeed, that you've played this game many times, you've lived this life many times. So therefore, there are elements of your subconscious that will know about your own future. And these can be fed back in dream scenarios. And ordinarily, as J.W. Dunn described it in his book, An Experiment with Time, he describes specifically a series of events whereby he was down in South Africa. He was involved in the Boer War in somewhere about 1902, 1903, just after the Boer War. And when he was dreaming, he dreamt that there had been a huge explosion. A volcano had exploded, and he was on it in the dream. He was on a French-speaking Caribbean island, and the people from the other side of the island were speaking to him in French and saying the volcano's exploded. 4,000 people have been killed. It's been terrible. It's been terrible. He wakes up, and the dream is so vivid in his mind that he remembers it. And two or 3 days later, the newspapers come down from London. 2 or 3 days, maybe slightly later in those days. And he sees the headlines of the Daily Telegraph. And the headlines he read said 4,000 people killed on the French island of Martinique. And what happened was the volcano behind Saint-Pierre, which was the major town, had exploded. And something called a nuit ondante had rolled down the town, which was a poisonous cloud, and had rolled over the town. It had killed everybody in the town and people in boats in the harbour. Really terrible disaster. And ironically enough, the only person that survived was a prisoner who was below ground level, and he was going to be executed a few days later, but he survived because the cloud rolled over him. Yeah. Now, what intrigued Don about this was a few years later, he used to give talks about this particular precognitive event. And somebody approached him in one of the talks and said, do you know, you turn around your tale about Martinique and the disaster at Saint-Pierre. He said, there's one thing you're wrong about. You know, you say that 4,000 people died. And Don turned around and said, yes. And he said, well, actually, 40,000 people died. And Don said, no, it was 4,000. But Don had kept the newspaper article. So he went back and read the newspaper article. And the interesting thing is he'd misread it. He'd misread, in his enthusiasm, 4,000 for 40,000. Now, he then suddenly realized, just hold on, that means my dream, although my dream was precognitive, my dream wasn't precognitive of the event. My dream was precognitive based upon me reading the newspaper article. And this is when he realized that precognitive dreams are not necessarily because you were involved in the event, but because you hear about the event in some way and your interpretation embroiders it. Now, clearly what I would suspect there was that something must have triggered, Alan, you and your wife, precognitive dreams, either something you'd seen on television or something, and both your daemons brought down that dream sequence, which was a dream sequence of your own future.
Yeah. Sarah, have you had anybody else report anything like this?
There's a lot of people do report precognitive dreams. One of the biggest researchers on precognitive dreams is Keith Hearn, who was actually the person that discovered lucid dreaming as being a kind of recognizable different state of consciousness in the 70s, I think, in Hull. Yeah.
And just to jump in here, today is Lucid Dreaming Day, isn't it?
Oh, yeah, it's World Lucid Dream Day. And I think
as well as Anthony Peake's birthday.
Yeah, oh yeah, happy birthday, Anthony Peake.
Happy birthday, Anthony.
Actually, I think that maybe it's World Lucid Dreaming Day because this was the day that Keith Hearn proved lucid dreaming. I'm sure there's some historical relevance to it being April 12th.
Yeah. I want to talk a little bit later with you, Tony, about the Akashic field, because it was you that made me aware of this, and I've formulated my own opinions, and I've got some interesting stuff to discuss with you shortly. Before we go into past life regression, before we go into Rendlesham Forest, well, I was working with Nick Pope and Carol Hult with the Rendlesham documentary that we did, which was fascinating. It's a topic in itself. I just want to talk to you, just to tail off on the comedy side of hypnosis. In 1992, let me just check my notes to verify this is correct. 1st of April 1992, I received a telephone call from Brunei, a lady that I know that worked for the royal family. And she said, Princess Giran Hanak Hamida was celebrating her 15th or 16th birthday. Would I like to come and entertain? Because they'd asked her who she could recommend, and we'd worked together before. She was from Manchester, Gorton, Manchester. She went a long way. She's now living in Dubai, running an entertainment company called the Laughter Factory Productions, and she's still in Dubai now. We haven't spoken for many years. So long story short, it was in the middle of the night. I got this call, 1st of April. And then I'd been to a party that night, had a few copious amounts of whiskey, and I thought, oh, did I have a weird dream last night that somebody called me and invited me to go to work for the royal family? And I told my friends and family, and he went, Alan, it's April Fool. Somebody's pulling your tail, matey. So anyway, I must have given him my address and details, because I ended up getting a flight ticket, Singapore Airlines. That's how I discovered Singapore, by the way, to go out to Brunei in April. And what an experience that was. There's only so much I can tell you about this, because I was offered, I think it was £7,000 to spill the beans on Prince Geoffrey and his antics, which at the time they were the richest family in the world. But I'm going to leave all that murky side over there. Which I didn't accept. I didn't accept that. I don't believe in that I was treated like you wouldn't believe. But my experiences with the princess was pretty amazing. She was only young. And she hadn't been exposed to people like me. And I was a lot younger then. So just picture this, you know, a young Asian girl who's not allowed near boys, never mind, is all of a sudden left with me.
Not a good idea. Not a good idea.
Cheeky scouser with blue eyes and blonde hair at the time. And anyway, she said, that's right. My first impression was we walked over to meet her and there was this yellow Ferrari. And I was thinking, how do I dress her? What do I say? And my friend was saying, just be yourself, treat her like you would treat everybody else. Because, you know, when you're going to meet a real princess of the richest family in the world, what do you say? How do you address a young princess? So I thought, okay, you know, I think I have a nice, pleasant attitude with people, and I do seem to get on with people. So anyway, we met by her yellow Ferrari, and I went, whose is this? And she said, it's mine. She said, I can't drive because my feet won't touch the pedals. And she had a hoodie on, and I said, what did you get? What presents did you get? And she was with her cousin, and her cousin's called City. So the both of them were like, you know, like this being, you know, having this young English chap who's creating all these jokes and having a bit of fun with them. So anyway, she said, would you like to come horse riding with me? And I went, oh, I'd love to, because I grew up on Fender Valley Farm. So I could ride, no problems. I was bareback riding when I was 14. So it wasn't a problem getting on a horse, even though I hadn't done so for a long time. So anyway, they had the Argentinian polo horses there, the best in the world. And something about 17 hands. You know, take your pick. What do you want to go? So I'm horse riding with the princess right around the paddock. And I was thinking, oh my goodness. So we did the show. The next day we did the show for her. And in fairness, it was hard work. They didn't have a clue what it was they were supposed to do. They had no idea. I wasn't allowed to hypnotize any of the royal family or any of their staff. So that left me with about 10 people to work on, you know, so that was very, very difficult. But the highlight of the day was to stand up and say, Your Royal Highnesses, Princess Gira and Hanaka Mida, ladies and gentlemen, good afternoon. Bates, you're going nowhere in life.
He echoed again.
Yeah, so we did the show. It was really hard work. In fact, I might even have a memento. Yes, I have. I've got a memento from the palace. Letter opener. Keep that dear to my heart. Remembering, if you spill the beans, Alan, Prince Geoffrey will send someone to push that in. So anyway,
I keep thinking you're saying Prince Joffrey, and I keep thinking, listen, this Game of Thrones, you know.
I don't watch that. No, I don't watch much TV unless it's educational. You know, Bates, you're going nowhere in life. So, but the interesting thing is, I asked Hamida, and I said, "What do I call you?" And she said to me, "What do I call you?" I said, "You can call me Alan." She said, "You can call me Hamida." So that was it. Then we were first name terms. So she said, so I said, "Oh," when I left, she gave me a gift as well. We were all expecting Rolex watches. Well, we didn't get the Rolex watches. I got this computer game. Anyway, so I said, Anita, is it okay when I go back to England if I use by royal appointment on my letterhead, the addendum by royal appointment? And she went, yeah, sure, no problems. I don't think she knew what it was, but she said I could. So from then on, Alan Bates, international hypnotist by royal appointment. So when I was marketing my show in London, I got this letter from Buckingham Palace, and I should have dug it out. I've still got it here. A letter from Buckingham Palace. Dear Mr. Bates, we are aware that you're marketing your services as by royal appointment. You do not have a warrant for Her Majesty's services, so thereby you must remove by royal appointment from your stationery and the like. So I wrote back and said, aha, it wasn't the royal family of Brunei. Sorry, it wasn't the royal family of the United Kingdom. I said it was the Brunei royal family, and I give them the dates, the times, and everything that was there, and I had that permission. Literally the netter day, letter through the door to say, dear Mr. Bates, thank you very much for explaining your association with the royal family of Brunei. We wish you well.
Wow.
So I still got those letters there, you know, so that was quite interesting. So have we got time to go into the topic of past life regression?
Yeah, I think it's quite important. I know that there's quite a few people in the chat room really keen to go on to this subject.
Okay.
So yes, please.
Okay, well, I've always been interested in parapsychology, the esoteric, ghost spirits. I've had lots and lots of experiences myself with spirit entities and communication and everything else. I've written a book, in fact, I've got it here, Alan Bates' True Ghost Stories, available on Amazon. A lot of this is located on the Wirral, but it does cover Singapore, it covers North Wales and Chester. It's all based on research. And that's an interesting book to anybody that's interested in ghosts and the paranormal and the like. And maybe if we've got time, we can come into that later. Going back in the 90s, the big guy in Liverpool who was doing the psychic one-to-one readings was a chap called Derek Akora. Now, at this time, he was just known only in Liverpool, but he was very, very, very good. There's no doubt about it. So I went to see him. He didn't know me, and sat down, and I think he was charging £25 or £20 in them days, which is quite a lot of money, you know, for half an hour reading. Anyway, I sat down with him, and he said, I've got both of your grandmothers here, Mary and Lena. And I thought, my goodness, yes, he's got my grandmothers, but he hasn't got their names. He's got their nicknames. How can he do that? Getting names, but getting their nicknames of deceased people. So I said, you've got my attention now. And he said to me, he was very, very good, actually. And he said to me, I've got your grandmother is telling me to tell you to be aware of a lady called Ali. Oh, I've got to be careful here mentioning names. Yeah, so anyway, yeah, I've got to leave the name out. So it's going to end in tears, and it's going to be very unpleasant for you. Well, 12 months later, seems to be 12 months later, I'm in the Chelsea Reach, New Brighton nightclub, and I see this very, 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 very pretty Asian girl. Didn't click at the time. This was on the Friday night. Put my charms on. Saturday night, I was in London on the That's Life with Esther Ransom. I was star of the show that night, Esther Ransom show, That's Life, on the Saturday night. So Friday night, I'm in the nightclub, having a few drinks, meeting this person that was going to become a big part of my life. Saturday night, That's Life in London. Sunday night in Chester on a very pleasant boat trip on a date with this young lady. Now, in the space of Friday night and Sunday, I dug out the tape that Derek Akora had recorded my psychic reading. And he said, be careful of this person. He said, your grandmother's telling me to make sure you've got the right person. Her birthday she's Sagittarius, 23rd of November. She's a Sagittarius, and named her on the tape. Mm-hmm. So I dig the tape out, listen to it, beware of this person. And I thought, this is the person I'm taking out on a date that my nan has told me to stay clear of. So I got a piece of paper, wrote down Sagittarius 23rd, folded it up, put it in the ashtray in my car, went on the date in Chester, driving home. I said, so when is your birthday? And she said, oh, November. And I said, what date? And she said, the 23rd. I said, open the ashtray. So she opens the ashtray, takes the note out and goes, you're weird. Because Derek Akora told me, my nan had told him to tell me, this is the woman to steer clear of. And I didn't take the advice, did I? And it, 6 years later, it came to fruition. And yeah, broke my heart. We had a daughter together who's now American. But anyway, there you go. So, so Derek Akora and I, we still weren't friends. I was just a paying client. So he rang me up one day and said, Alan, he said, my guide has just told me that we're going to work together. He said, I don't know how. I've just told that I've got to get in touch with you to have lunch. And we're going to do something together. So we had lunch at a little Spanish restaurant in Liverpool. And I said, well, look, I'm a hypnotist. I can go on stage and I can hypnotize people and regress them into past lives. So maybe you can do your mediumship and psychic stuff that you do, but on stage. So we said, okay. So we got involved with Billy Butler, Radio Merseyside, Billy and Wally Show, you know those, and a few other media people that we do know. Roy Bassnett, who I was both on his show recently, weren't we?
Yeah, we were.
Yeah. So anyway, we started putting these shows together. We were charging £5 a ticket, and we were selling out all over Liverpool. Selling out. They were queuing to get in. At the same time, Derek got into Granada Breeze TV, got his own TV show, and at a certain point, we used to do these things called ghost busting, which was basically house clearances, seances, exorcisms. Now, if you'd have said to me when I was a child that one day I'm going to go around with a famous medium and do exorcism, I'd be frightened to death. But Derek used to ring me up because I was his, we were best friends, Derek Okora and I. It was me that put him on the stage. He hadn't even held a microphone before he met me, and I had the stage presence and everything else. So we put together this show called The Paranormal Experience, and it was a fusion of psychic energy. It was a fusion, which is going to cover the Akashic field in a minute, Tony, which you made me aware of. It was a fusion of past life regression and a psychic show. So we're offering something that nobody else is doing in the world, where I'm getting 20 people on stage, hypnotizing them and finding out which ones I can take into a past life. Bear in mind, I have 1 hour. So I'm going into all these cases of past life regression and we record everything. And then I bring Derek Okora in as a medium to look into their past lives. Well, nobody else is doing that. We were getting people to Google it in real time. So I've got a guy who passed away for the Cheshire Regiment or the Gloucestershire Regiment who passed away in First World War on this date and his private so-and-so and so and so on. And people are Googling and go, yeah, got it here. That's correct. That information's dead on. We had one lady who was killed in east of London. She was murdered, I think it was during the war. And somebody Googled it and got the pub's name and said, yep, that woman, she's here now. So we're getting all this information. So we put together the most amazing show called The Paranormal Experience. Well, at that point, Derek had a TV show, so we stopped working together. And he went on to become, well famous and the most respected. And okay, he made a few silly things, did a few silly things with Most Haunted, the TV show. Which it was none of his doing, by the way. I've got to be very careful what I say here for litigation. But Derek Okora is the most genuine psychic medium that I've ever met in my entire life, and beyond any reasonable doubt. Certain people can be suckered into all of these other mediums and everything else. Derek Okora was the real deal. I think he died of COVID, by the way, because just as COVID was breaking, he died of pneumonia within 48 hours. I attended the funeral. It was very sad. But Derek went on to do a lot of television in Egypt as well. And so The Paranormal Experience, some of the things that we did, we were selling theatres out. We took a break then of, it might have been about 10 years. Meanwhile, Derek hit the pinnacle of touring all the very, very big theatres. In 1 week, he could be doing 5 theatres all over the UK and selling out every single ticket in advance and giving them good presentation. And anyway, several years later, we got back together and we said, shall we continue with our show, The Paranormal Experience? Now, I was riding a little bit on Derek Okora's name, but between us, we had a fantastic show. We took it to the Isle of Wight. We took it to Jersey. Fort Regent in Jersey. We took it to Benidorm Palace Theatre in Spain and all the provincial theatres in the UK. And we had some absolutely amazing quality shows. And the experiences I had there, I really, once again, sharpened my teeth there on learning the trade of regression. And what I learned from that has really opened my mind as to, am I okay to give you a couple of examples?
Yeah, please do. Yeah.
Right. the one particular show was in, I think it was in Blackpool. Oh no, it was a show somewhere in a theatre show somewhere in England. Excuse me. And I had a lady regressed in a past life, and she was in service in Blackpool in the 1800s. And I get them to open up and tell me about their life, the times, their age, what they do in this past life. And then I take them up to when they pass over in this past life and find out how they died. So this girl, she was an unhappy soul. She was basically a slave for this guy, and he was a smuggler. That's what he was. He was a smuggler, and he held bad company. And I said, so I'm going to take you up now to when you pass over in this past life. How do you die in this past life? And then she said, I was strangled to death. And anyway, I said, I'm going to lead you up into it. And next thing, she's choking and gasping for breath. So I had to stop the regression. And afterwards, Gwen, who's Derek Acor's wife, said, "Why did you stop it, Al? It was so exciting there. It was so exciting." I said, "It shocked me to bits." But the best regression case was two regressions. One with Jack the Ripper, which we'll talk about in a moment. And I've written about all of these in my ghost book. The best one would have to, and this was verified. We did a show at the Altrincham Garrick Theatre near Manchester, and we had a full house, and it was the most fabulous show I think I've ever done with Derek. The standards of mediumship, the standards of regression cases were just absolutely outstanding. And I regressed a lady back. She was from a Manchester lady, regressed back to the Second World War in 1943. And she went to Dewsbury, and she was in an ammunition factory called Steaton's Ammunition Factory. She had a son. Her husband was killed in the British Army, I think in Belgium. So she was a single mum. She was in this shift work at this ammunition factory. And I took her up to when she passed away, and she was actually in the ammunition factory, 4 girls round a press. And she was explaining how they packed the press and how they put the shells on and everything else. And she went through it as if she was doing it. And the press exploded, this armament exploded and killed the 4 girls. And she had tears running down her eyes. And I said to her, what was the last thought as she was passing away? And she said, what's going to happen to my son? Now, during the regression, we got the name of the school the son went to. We got the husband's name. We got the son's name. We had her name. So we had all the names. We had all this information. And we got involved with a company called Zigzag Promotions in London, who were going to make a documentary of this. We had a big falling out with them in the end because they were half-heartedly put the production together. But then we went to Dewsbury, and we found the school. We found the address where they lived, and her husband's name is on the war memorial in Dewsbury.
Wow.
So, and this lady afterwards had never even been to Dewsbury. And Steaton's Ammunition Factory, the only thing that's left, and it's a grade 2 listed building, is the pillbox. That's all that's left. And at the time, because of propaganda, they wouldn't put it in the papers that there'd been a big accident, because it was bad morale, bad publicity. Just, oh, there was an accident, and that was it. But the press blew up 4 women. And we even found out where she's buried. We got all this information during the regression. It was very, very powerful stuff. Very powerful stuff. The next one, I was working I wasn't with Derek Acorda on this night. I was working with another psychic, and we were at a theatre in Lancashire or Yorkshire. Can't remember exactly which one it was because we did so many. And I had this. Now this is just amazing. This you know, when you get a really good night and everything's gelling and coming together, and that energy, the energy from the audience, the energy of the people I'm working with. I had a lady deeply regressed into, I think it was 1881. You have to excuse me if I got the dates wrong, 1881, 1880, I can't remember the exact date, but I'm referring to notes. And, you know, what do you do in this life? Where are you now in this past life? I'm in London, cobbled streets. Are you a happy soul? No. What are you doing? I'm working. What do you mean you're working? I'm a prostitute. So I went, you know, and the audience are taking all of this in. We had about 400 or 500 people in, and they're taking all of this in. And so I'm working as a journalist then, trying to find out information. You know, who are your clients? She worked with sailors, and she had a brothel. And I said, do you have European nationalities? She went, I worked a brothel in Paris. So we got all this information. She had a child. And all this information, and I said, so what is your name? And she said, Mary Kelly. Mary Kelly to me, it doesn't mean anything to me. Mary Kelly, oh, so your name's Mary Kelly. And a guy in the audience stood up and shouted, Mary Kelly was the last prostitute to be murdered by Jack the Ripper. So I couldn't wait to get home and research that one. And we record the regression cases. We have one of our crew staff we have a pre-printed form, and we take all this information about the siblings, who they married, the years, the education, the work, and everything else in past life. So we've got a profile of their past life. And at the very end of the performance, we get them on stage. Well, they're on stage at the end of the performance, and I'll get them up and I'll say, so for example, Sarah, you know, you've just been on a journey maybe 200 years ago, and I was saying to you, so, you know, what is your name? And you give me your name, and I'll say, well, would you like to know where you've been on this journey? Well, yeah. And this lady, she was quite posh. She was well educated. She was well dressed, and I said to her, have you any idea where you've traveled to? No. Well, you lived in London. She went, oh, I've got no recollection of that at all. And so I'm starting as an entertainer now. I'm milking her emotions and their curiosity. So I said to her, would you like to know what you did in a past life? And she went, yes, I wouldn't mind. What did I do in a past life? I said, I can't tell you. And the audience are going, tell her. I said, no, I'm sorry, love, I can't, you know. And she said, you must tell me now. What did I do in a past life? I said, you were a prostitute. Like this, and the colour drained out of her face. I said, but that was in a past life. It was in a past life, not now. You're not a prostitute now. It was in a past life. And then I said, and it gets even worse. I said, because you were killed by Jack the Ripper. She was, oh my goodness, Mary Kelly. She didn't know who Mary Kelly was either. So I came home, Googled Mary Kelly, boom, 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 boom. All the dates, all the things that she told us were correlated correctly. And what we did was this presentation of past life, as they come on the stage, I say, so, you know, Jane Peters, in a past life, Mary Kelly, this is your past life, as in Eamon Andrews.
Eamon Andrews, yeah.
This is your life. This is your past life.
I can't imagine she did find that very hilarious.
Sorry?
Incredibly traumatic past life. I can't imagine that anyone would find that very hilariously funny. I guess that's where you're running the risk of.
She's actually okay with it, but she had no recollection. And you can just look at people, and there's no way that lady would have stood on stage and said, I was a prostitute in a past life. You know?
How do they feel afterwards, though? I mean, if you know, my mum told me that I was a twin before I was born, and that I ate my other twin because I'm greedy, and I was a bit upset about that. But being told that I was a prostitute in a past life and I was murdered by Jack the Ripper, I think I'd be pretty shocked.
Yeah, I know. Yeah. So you see, then this is where we come in Anthony's theory of the Akashic field, because I often get asked, where's this information coming from, Alan? How are you? It's not me that's drawing it out. the information, and sometimes it can be so precise. And the research we've done in the past on many, in my book, once again, True Ghost Stories, I've got a whole chapter on Derek Accorder, the paranormal experience, and actually past lives that I've gone into. It's available on Amazon. And the information that I'm getting, this information has got to come from somewhere. Where is the somewhere? Now, when I start a presentation, I explain to my audience that this information has got to come from somewhere. So I'm going to give you a few options to choose from. Am I opening psychic channels? Like a good medium? I'm not talking charlatans, I'm talking professional, good psychic mediums who, beyond any reasonable doubt, who are bang on. Am I opening channels there? And that information is coming from, which ties in with the Akashic field, so that when we pass away, this body we're in as a vessel just decomposes or gets burned, but the essence that travels, the energy, you can't destroy energy, can you? You can't destroy energy. Where does it go? So the option I give them, is it possible that religion and science can come together? Religious people can call it heaven. Scientists can call it the Akashic field. It's the same place, basically, the universal force. So is it, we're all star children, we're all star people. Is it possible that every single is it possible that this information is going back into the Akashic field, and when you pass away, and I'm drawing in on that spiritual or that energy level? So is it coming in through the Akashic field? The next one, is it DNA? Is it being handed down to us in our DNA? So you might look like you might look like your mother, you've got your father's personality, your grandfather's illness. Is it possible the imprint in DNA from past lives is being transmitted that way? And I have to put this out as well, which I certainly don't agree with, but is it possible that the character that we're reliving in these past lives is a fictitious character, somebody that you've seen on film, read in a book, and subliminally it's imprinted in your mind, and the brain puts the missing jigsaw pieces together, which it does, and then it presents this person in fantasy land? I really don't believe that whatsoever, because the research we've done and is far beyond any doubt that it's real. It really is, it's real. So, and then the next option, is it absolute nonsense? So I put that out to the audience for them to choose. But the information that we get, and when you research it, and it's so accurate, it's mind-blowing, it really is. But the Akashic field, when Tony did the book with Laszlo, Professor Erwin Laszlo, you discussed the Akashic field quite a bit there, didn't you?
Yeah, aka the 0 point field. Yeah,
that's
the idea there's an informational field, and we can draw upon that, because effectively at a higher level we're one consciousness experiencing itself subjectively. So we can draw on these memories.
Yeah, I know. So what's going on during the state of hypnosis in the mind? I was doing a small group of, it was in Malta actually, and I had 2 clients come to see me, because I do the group therapies. We used to do the big group therapies where we'd get 100 people in. The 600 one was exceptional when we first launched it, but then we used to do regular 100 workshops on a Sunday morning. And then I also do the groups of 7. Well, on this particular therapy session, I had 2 clients booked in for stop smoking. There were 2 strangers, and they sat in my office. I hypnotized them. I stopped them smoking. And when I woke them up, before they left, they said, "Mr. Bates, something happened to you as you were hypnotizing us." As you started. And I said, "What do you mean?" He said, "Your face morphed." I said, and the other guy said, "Yeah, I saw it too." Now, I wasn't aware of that, but they both said that my face changed altered when I started putting them into a hypnotic trance. So I'm thinking now, is this energy coming in from somewhere else? And once again, quoting Nikola Tesla, I love the guy. Is that energy coming in here, the healing energy? And I'd like to also raise another point. I did a documentary in my early days before I was working with Derek Acora. And I had a medium called Gary Dakin, actually. I'm sure you wouldn't mind me mentioning his name. And he's from Manchester. He came to take part in this documentary, and he's a trance medium. And I'd never seen anything like this before. And I'm inviting this into my home because I had my living room was an oldie worldy. It was an old schoolhouse, and it was very gothicy, you know, interesting. So Gary Dakin didn't need, the idea was a hypnotist hypnotizes a trance medium to go into deep trance. He didn't need me. He went really deep. And then I was frightened to death, and I had to live in the house for years after, because, and I didn't know, it was the first time I'm meeting him, and he sat there and his face transformed. His jaw went up to one side. He had spittle dripping down. Is that the whites of his eyes completely rolled right up. He started speaking in an old man's voice. And he said to me, he said, "You, young man," he said, "have problems with your stomach," which I didn't. And I said, "Oh," I said, "is it going to be a problem?" And he said, "Yes, it's going to be a serious problem, but I am going to heal you." I left it there. And then he discussed something privately, which I'm not going to mention, about the family, which was absolutely bang on correct. But then he said, the Earth is going to be struck by an asteroid or a comet. It's going to be struck, and there's going to be mass devastation. And then he said, "You're not ready for this." And he woke himself up, but his face distorted. The whites of his eyes went up. He went ashen white. And when I woke him up, he knew, he had no recollection of what he'd said. He said, "I never do." He said, "They're channeling through me." And the interesting thing is, several years later, I was rushed into Arrow Park Hospital and an emergency blue light job to get in. I had a ruptured bowel, and I was taken into Arrow Park Hospital. The surgeon said to me the next day, he said, "If you hadn't come in when you did," he said, "you would have died that afternoon. You have trouble with your stomach." I don't now. I can drink 20 pints of Guinness and the hottest Vindaloo curry, don't have an issue. But I had a ruptured bowel. They had to cut a section of my bowel out, stitch it together. And I found out, and this leads into something else, because I found out later on, 6 months later, I found out that my cousin's son's girlfriend's mum was a theatre technician in Arrow Park Hospital. And she said, and she knew my name, she knew who I was. And she said to, you know, she passed it down the family and said, "We had Alan Bates in, and we lost him at one point. He actually died during the surgery. It was supposed to be a 2-3 hour operation. I was in there for 8 hours. I woke up, I was in a really, really, really bad way. And I remember, you know, they say that the light at the end of the tunnel, right? I mean, could the light at the end of the tunnel be the room lights of the delivery room?
Cheating the ferryman.
It wasn't a light room. What I experienced was pure white with dark figures in the room, but the energy was 100% beautiful. And I felt as though I had the option of staying where I was with them or coming back to this side now. And I loved it that much. I didn't want to come back. I was happy to die. I was happy to die. And I used this story last week in therapy with a young man who came to see me with his parents, who's got death anxiety, only a teenager. And I explained to him, I said, "Look, if this is any consolation, when you die, it's the most, because we are born to die, it is the most beautiful experience. Obviously, we don't want to go just yet, but when we do have to go, it's not unpleasant. It's a beautiful experience." And I held my mum and dad's hands when they passed away, and I've got nothing to worry about. So if any of the viewers today are worrying about death, please don't. You know, you're going to die, accept it, but know it's special and beautiful. that all I can describe it, Tony, is it's pure love, the purest love, respect, with no fear whatsoever. Just beautiful. I recently read a book with Dolores Cannon and Dr. Brian Wise, Many Lives, Many Masters. I don't know if you read them books. Have you read them?
Haven't, no, but
Dr. Brian Wise, you must read that. And Dolores Cannon, she's interesting as well. She's dead now. She passed, an American author. She passed away several years ago. But these are big authors at the time. Very interesting books, and they back up what I explained. And I think you've discussed the deadweight experiments, haven't you?
I know of them. Yes, the difference in the weight when was it McGregor or somebody did an experiment weighing somebody before and after death.
Massachusetts. He was. What
was his name again?
McDougall.
McDougall. That was. I knew it was Scottish.
McDougall. I think that was around in the 1860s, where he got these fine-tuned scales, and he worked out that when you pass away, you lose 21, on average, 21 grams, literally in seconds.
Yeah, Mary Roach wrote a book about this. The question I always ask about that is, there's a contradiction here.
Yeah.
How can you lose weight if it's your soul? If the soul is non-material, how can there be a loss of weight?
Maybe you can answer this one. Energy, does energy have mass?
Energy does have mass, yeah.
So
that's an idea. Yeah, so a loss of energy. It's a possibility, yeah.
The other interesting thing about this, Tony, is I think the amount of energy to split the atom, it was like was it a fifth of a gram or something? So that energy that we lose is 21 very, very small amount, but the energy that withers, if that's the case, and it does go back in.
No, that's a very interesting idea. Funnily enough, this works very well with the interview I did yesterday with Professor Browday, and it will be quite interesting to discuss some of the points you've made here with him when we get him back as well. I'm aware of time, Alan, and I really am very keen. I mean, this has been enthralling, but I'm really keen to just finish off with the Rendlesham stuff, because I know how much that's interested. So I'm happy if Sarah's happy to go on a little bit longer than normal just to get that in. Sarah, are you okay with that?
Yeah, sure.
Okay. Right, okay. What is the time? Let me just check the time. Right, okay. God, time's flown quick when you're having fun, isn't it?
It always does. We dilate time here, don't we, Sarah? This is what happens.
Absolutely. Time, now that's it. Linear time.
Yep. We're in orthogonal time.
Right, okay.
So another 10 minutes or so. So if you can tell us a little bit about your Rendlesham documentary.
We can wrap it up in 10 minutes with the Rendlesham Forest incident. I've had quite a lot of experiences with extraterrestrials. I've even, my last book I wrote, which is my favorite here, is UFOs, It's Time to Wake Up, by alien, can't see the small print, by alien appointment. And it was going to be by royal appointment, but I changed it to by alien appointment, because basically in regression, I contacted an extraterrestrial, which we'll talk about in a moment. So going back to, was it 2010? 2010, I got a call from a chap who's a TV producer called Paul Wookey. I don't know if you've come across Paul, very interesting guy, nice bloke as well.
I have heard the name, yes.
Paul Wookey, I think he's based in Bournemouth. Anyway, and he said he's very interested in the esoteric, the paranormal. And he said, Alan, he said, I know that you're interested in extraterrestrial stuff. He said, I'm going to put a documentary together on the anniversary of Rendlesham Forest. Well, I didn't know anything about it. And for the viewers who are listening now who don't know anything about it, yeah, I'm sure you've heard of Roswell. Well, this is Britain's Roswell. And in 1980, on the base, it happened over a 3-day period. And I'm going to cut a lot of this out. For the people who are interested, research it, even buy the book. There's a lot of publicity on Rendlesham Forest. But Colonel Charles Holt was the deputy base commander. Now, at that time, he had massive security clearance. Think of it. We had nuclear weapons stored, which they cannot deny, but they cannot confirm. And it was the time of Green and Common and everything else. And there were lights they thought there was a downed aircraft in Rendlesham Forest. So the American police the base police and soldiers, airmen, went out to investigate this. And what they saw was a landed spacecraft. Okay. So it was, it's an immense story with so many elements coming in, but I've just got to condense this in the time that we've got. There were so many witnesses who saw this and people who were affected. And just a couple of years ago, the American government have agreed that one of them was damaged and his medical records had disappeared because he touched this craft. So whatever happened, it cannot be confirmed. But anyway, so on the anniversary, we went to Rendlesham Forest with the Fluke Colonel Charles Holt, retired, over, also with Nick Pope. Now, Nick Pope is the type of person that people who are interested in what we're talking about now would give their left arm to spend 3 days with Nick Pope, right? And Charles Holt. And we had, we called it the headquarters, that rented a big posh house, and we were all staying in this headquarters. So we got the chance off camera to do a lot of talking about all sorts of things. So my input was to regress a local lady called Brenda, who claims to have had been abducted and had regular contact with extraterrestrials. So I regressed her under hypnosis, and once again it was like with the face changed, and the voice that was coming out faster than she was taught. She was basically speaking in two tongues. She was speaking as Brenda, then speaking as this alien host. And I asked the alien, I asked the extraterrestrial if that's what we were getting. I mean, you've got to, I'm not a fool. I don't know whether it was actual factual, but if it was pretty scary. And I asked her whether, I asked the alien host, was this a craft that landed in Rendlesham Forest? And it was affirmative. They said absolutely. And there's several races here, and not all of them are friendly. And you've got the greys, you've got your reptilians, you've got all sorts of different things. I think it's going to be very, very soon we will get disclosure. And the book I put together, UFOs, has got a whole chapter dedicated to disclosure. What would happen? Well, you only have to look at COVID now and see how that affected the world. Could you imagine could you imagine disclosure now? Or the petrol stations would run dry, there'd be civil unrest, people would lose their humanity, people wouldn't get fed, it would be a complete total breakdown. And that's probably the reasons why, even look at the ATIP program in America recently. I mean, for people who don't believe in extraterrestrial, just Google the ATIP program and Disclosure Product, and Dr. Stephen Greer as well. He would be a really great guy to get on your show.
I think that Stephen Greer and I are both doing Contact in the Desert this year. I think I may be wrong, but I suspect we are, which could be quite interesting.
Medical doctor.
I know that the guys that do Contact in the Desert are really quite interested in the work you've been doing at Rendlesham as well. And I must facilitate contact between you and Victoria Gigovian, who is the lady that effectively runs Contact in the Desert, because I think it could be quite interesting, your work in terms of
Rendlesham Forest did happen. What they tried to say, now I can categorically put this theory out for good. On the night that we recorded, we were in the Rendlesham Forest at 2 o'clock in the morning, 30 years anniversary of when this happened. And they put it down to, the debunkers put it down to Orford Ness Lighthouse.
Yeah, that's the one I've heard.
6 miles away. And it's a blip. It's a blip. And you know what? What a load of nonsense. Orford Ness Lighthouse is like looking at a dim street light over the road from where you live. And they tried to say that was the UFO that they saw. This was bright lights that got the attention of the deputy base commander, got the attention of all, and the British police. And something went on that night, and and I asked Charles Holt, I said, off the record, Charles, I said, were the Americans storing nuclear weapons at Bentwaters? Rendlesham, and he said, I can't deny it, I can't confirm it, and smiled. Because he's still bound to, and so is Nick Pope. Nick Pope signed the Official Secrets Act. They've all got to be careful of what they give away.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, Mark Kittimat, one of the regulars on the program, is actually saying that Holt is also at Contact in the Desert this year as well. I knew that one of them was involved in some way or other. So it could be quite interesting to facilitate something that for you, Alan. Right. Well, this has been absolutely extraordinary. I've had the opportunity, and this would have been our long drink in the Three Stags probably at some stage, where I've really got into the background of exactly what makes you tick and your phenomenal life. I think Sarah and I have just been sitting here quietly, just listening, and it's just fascinating. It's been absolutely.
I'm sorry if I've waffled on a lot.
Not at all. This is what we want. We're here to convey information to people and ideas and thoughts and everything else as well. And it's been simply wonderful. I've really enjoyed it. So can you let everybody know your website, your details and everything else as well?
I have 3 websites. So just Google me if you're interested in the hypnotherapy. If you've got issues that need dealing with, you can get me on alanbateshypnotherapy.tv. I do have a past life regression website, which I don't promote very often, but it's got about 18 to 20 recordings of people being regressed into a past life. When I was with Derek Accorder on tour, and that website's there. It's pastlives.tv, and my general website is alanbates.tv. So if any of you viewers would like any questions answering or on what we discussed today, I've always got time, and I always reply. I'll always get the time to reply back to anybody that's got an interest in my work or what I do or what I waffle on about. So it's a shame that we're going to miss each other by a day in Malta, because the last time I saw you was in Malta, and we're going back the same time.
Yes.
I'm going back to work on the 3rd of June, and I leave on the 12th, and you arrive on the 11th, is it?
We arrive the day before you go. Yeah. Well, we can see what we could do possibly. I mean, it's still all so up in the air, but we booked the hotel and we booked the flight. So,
well, you enjoy yourself. And Sarah, it's been lovely to meet you, and thank you very much indeed for explaining away, because I've never really spoken to anybody.
Well, I don't know if I've got any answers to it. I think that, I think often a lot of this phenomena has a variety of different roots and reasons. So I don't think there's always like a one solution fits all answer to a lot of those kinds of situations. But I do find, I personally think precognitive dreams are possible. But the mechanisms behind it, I find fascinating, and I'm not sure whether we'll ever have the answers to that.
Yeah, thank you very much. Tony, do I have time to tell you a very, very, very super quick story?
Oh, yeah, no, absolutely.
Right, okay, it's just, because I'm just pulling in all different experiences from life. I mean, this is only a part of what I've lived so far. But going back in the 2000s, I had a dog called Trixie, and she was my best friend. There's no doubt about it. We had this most amazing relationship. I loved her to bits. She slept in my bed and everything. And when she passed away in 2002, it was 3 months after she died, and I was brokenhearted, but I cried my eyes out when she passed away. I never trust anybody that doesn't love animals, especially dogs. So anyway, she passed away, and I say good morning to her every morning when I wake up, a photograph, and I say good night to her every night when I go to bed. But what happened was, 3 months after she died, my wife my ex-wife. She's an air stewardess for Virgin Atlantic, and she used to fly to America three, sometimes 4 times a month. So she was away out the house, 3 o'clock in the morning, 3 months after my dog had died, and I'm in bed, and I felt something scratching the bed, and I thought, well, what's this? And I sat up thinking I was dreaming, and my dog Trixie got into the bed.
Wow.
Right, and I was pinching myself thinking, Alan, if you blink now and she disappears, you've got to pass it off as a dream. So don't blink, keep your eyes open. So I was scratching, I was pulling my face, and she was there in the covers. And then after it seemed like for ages, and then the image faded out, but left the imprint of the dog in the duvet. That's my final story.
Wow, that
Bless
is
you all,
wonderful.
folks.
Yeah. The idea of losing a pet, that's really, really something. Sarah, have you got any final comments at all?
I have my spirit animal is my long-haired Alsatian that died, and I see my long-haired Alsatian sometimes in dreams, and I love that. I think we do have very special connections with dogs, especially because they do seem to just be conduits for that source energy of love. It's so adoring.
Dogs give you and animals give you unconditional love, especially dogs. And I'm going to part now with one piece of knowledge for you. What would happen? Who would be happy to see you if you locked your dog and your wife in the boot of your car for 1 hour? Who would be glad to see you when you open the boot?
Good analogy.
Not your wife, but your dog would be really excited.
It would, wouldn't it? Perfect. Alan, that was simply wonderful. Time has just flown by. Thoroughly enjoyed it. Really miss our meetings and everything else as well. So whenever I get the chance to get back up to Wirral, back up to Bevington, it will be really great to meet up again.
That's a pint of Guinness.
And I'll have the pint of Guinness in the Bridge Inn or something like that.
We'll do that. We'll do that.
All right. Okay. Well, thanks very much, Alan. Sir, as always, thanks very much.
Thank you, Sarah. Nice
we'll see you all soon.
And I hope the viewers have enjoyed our time today.
I guarantee they have done. It's been very active. Okay. Thanks very much. Okay then.
Bye-bye now. Ciao, ciao.